Hey guys, so welcome to a new series I'm starting that I'm actually really excited about. I'm going to be doing weekly recaps of every single NFL game. I'm going to give brief explanations of what happened, my opinion on who was the star of the game, and just all kinds of fun stuff about it. I think I'm really excited that this is going to be a weekly series of mine. Let me set up the camera real quick so I can talk to you guys with also looking at the screen. But I guess I'm going to start with a Thursday night game. It was the Packers versus Bears. First game of the 100th season. It makes sense. You have the biggest rivalry of all time. The Packers ended up beating the Bears 10-3. No one really stood out as like a star player. I mean, not a star player, as a breakout talent. But I mean, of course, Aaron Rodgers going 18 for 30, 203 yards and a touchdown. I mean, what's his name? Mitch Trubisky, really not that good. 228 yards and a pick. So no one really stood out as like a wow, I need to look out for this guy. It was kind of cool to see that Jimmy Graham got a touchdown out of this. So his first one, and like, I think he did have a few touchdowns last year. He just was not good for them at all. His career stats are amazing. He's gonna be a Hall of Famer. But no one really stood out to me as like this, oh my god, I need to keep an eye on this guy kind of player, because it was just an awful game. I'm gonna go about the 1 o'clock games, the 4:30, and then the Sunday night, and then the Monday games, because I didn't get to watch a lot of them. I watched some of them at work because I'm a server at Buffalo Wild Wings, so I get a lot of sports around me. I'm always bringing in sports, always looking at it. I'm going to start with the Chiefs-Jags game. It was a 40-26 near blowout from the Chiefs, having the Chiefs just dominate the Jags. Now, it's not fair to say that it was a domination by the Jags, the Chiefs, because Nick Foles got injured right away. Like, pretty much, like, he literally threw 7 passes. He had a touchdown, but he only threw 7 passes. So he went 5 for 8, 75 yards and a touchdown. But a guy named Gardner Minshew, I think it is, who was going to be the new Jags starter, had 275 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick on a 22 for 25. Now, of course, Patrick Mahomes having just an insane game. For some reason, the stats is showing Matt Moore, even though Pat Mahomes had a crazy game, throwing 3 touchdowns to Sammy Watkins. Damian Williams had a rushing touchdown. LaShawn McCoy had a nice 81 yards on 10 carries. But I think the breakout star of the game is going to be Gardner Minshew, because the guy had a really good game, or DJ Chark. I think he's a rookie. I think they're both rookies. So seeing them have this nice of a game and working well together was really cool. Jags fans should be excited. Also, the Jags did trade for Josh Dobbs, the backup quarterback out of Pittsburgh. So that's a pretty nice thing to have. Get your Gardner Minshew guy, this new guy, and then Josh Dobbs, who's actually a pretty good backup and who could turn into a good starter. Sorry, I gotta get my coffee. It's hot. Ugh. But next thing I'm going to talk about is the Vikings beating the Falcons 28-12. The Falcons just did not play well. Matt Ryan threw 2 picks, but he also did go 33 for 46, 304 yards and 2 touchdowns. Of course, Julio Jones is going to have himself a game. Had a touchdown, so that's about all he did. No, not a single one of the receivers broke 100 yards, so that's really nothing to be excited about. The only other person with a touchdown was Calvin Ridley, but they got dominated. Kirk Cousins didn't do much, only 98 yards and a touchdown. They really let the ball stay in Dalvin Cook's hands. No one on there, of course, no receiver broke 100 yards because he didn't even break 100 yards. Dalvin Cook had 21 rushes for 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also, a guy named Alexander Mattison, one of their newer guys, 9 rushes, 49 yards. And Kirk Cousins had 6 rushes for 4 yards and a rushing touchdown. So that's 2 total touchdowns in the game for Kirk Cousins, who showed that he can hold his own against a good team. This was my least favorite game of the day because I called the Browns to win this one. I've been saying I think the Browns are going to take a massive step up. I think they're going to go 10-6. This game, I'm still sticking with 10-6. I think they just need a little bit of time to get used to each other. I think they're going to drop 2 or 3 more games in their next 5, but I think they're going to be fine. I'm going to start on the Browns side because they did not do anything at all. Baker Mayfield had a just atrocious game. 25 for 38, which is not great at all. 285 yards, which is nice. 1 touchdown, but 3 interceptions, and 1 really costly interception near the end of the game. None of their running backs did much. Nick Chubb had 75 yards on 17 carries, so that's an average of 4.4 yards per carry. Jarvis Landry had a rush for 10 yards, so that's great. But no one stuck out for them. David Njoku had the only touchdown for Baker Mayfield. Odell had 71 yards. Their defense did nothing at all. But the guy who stood out for me the most this game was Marcus Mariota, who had to really prove himself here. He had to show that he could carry this team and he could lead, or else the backup Ryan Tannehill was going to come in. So it was nice to see him have 14 for 24, 248 yards and 3 touchdowns. Derrick Henry also put up a nice 84 yards and a touchdown. 2 of the touchdowns went to Delaney Walker. One of the receiving touchdowns, the only other receiving touchdown went to Derrick Henry. But a guy named A.J. Brown, younger guy, 3 receptions for 100 yards. Big game for him. So that's really nice to see some young guys stepping up for the Titans. The next game I want to talk about is the Bills versus Jets. Came down to a final play. 17-16, Bills took the win. Josh Allen had a rough game, but ended up bringing him back. Josh Allen went 24 for 37, 254 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. One of them was his pick 6 to C.J. Mosley to start out. I think it was the first drive. Well, he did have a rushing touchdown, so he had more rushing touchdowns than either of their running backs. And he had a really, really good connection with John Brown, so that was nice to see. Sam Darnold had a decent game for a second-year guy. He had 28 for 41, 175 yards and a touchdown. Le'Veon Bell, 17 carries for 60 yards, and then receiving touchdown, so that's not bad for him. So the next game we're going to talk about is the beatdown that ensued in the Dolphins and Ravens game. 59-10 was the end of score. Literally, the Ravens had 6 times the amount of points that the Dolphins had. They were actually 1 point shy of it, I'm sorry. So I'm going to start on the Dolphins side because they just had nothing that happened for them. Their starting quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick, went 14 for 29, 185 yards, and 1 touchdown and a pick. Now, if that wasn't a winning effort, that would be pretty good stats because 1 touchdown, 1 pick. There's a lot of quarterbacks who throw a pick along with a touchdown. But if you look at just the rest of the team, besides him, nothing happened. Josh Rosen stepped in, 3 passes, 5 yards, and an interception. So for him to step in that game where they needed him and just bomb, and him be so bad, they threw Fitzpatrick back in. It's bad. It's rough. They're rushing, literally their leading rusher, Kenyon Drake, with 12 yards. He had 4 carries. It was so bad that the person who had the most rushes had -1 yards. 5 rushes. Devontae Parker, who's a very good young receiver, 3 receptions for 75 yards. Preston Williams is the only person who had a receiving touchdown for them. Now, if you look at the Ravens on the other side, Lamar Jackson, 324 yards, 5 touchdowns. It was so bad they brought RG3 in, who had a passing touchdown. He went 6 for 6, 55 yards and a passing touchdown. Mark Ingram had 2 rushing touchdowns, 14 carries for 107 yards. Marquise Brown, man, that's a guy you need to keep an eye out for in fantasy. I'm not one for knee-jerk reactions, but when I see that Lamar Jackson on his second year finds a guy he really likes to connect with, you keep an eye on that, because if he sees a connection he can run with, he's going to keep going. Him and Mark Andrews are both 2 guys to keep an eye out for. They had 2 guys over 100 yards and 2 guys with 40-plus yards receiving. This was an insane showing. It was so much their freaking fullback had a receiving touchdown. Like, this was just outstanding. 2 picks. Earl Thomas had one of them, and a guy named Marlon Humphrey. Just outstanding playability. They had 1 punt. A single punt for 56 yards. Justin Tucker hit all of his field goals. Just an amazing showing from the Ravens, who needed to put up a big win. I know you're going to say it's the Dolphins, is not much. Now, I think probably my favorite game of the 1 o'clocks was the Eagles-Redskins game that I got to watch a lot of at work. So I'm going to start on the Redskins side. Oh, sorry, I got the hiccups. Case Keenum, 30 passes for 44, 30 completions on 44 attempts. Wow, I can't talk. 380 yards and 3 touchdowns. He needed that game because he had his backup, Dwayne Haskins, keeping an eye out there in case they wanted to throw him in. So that's a big game for him. And the fact they lost, it's okay. They lost 32-27 when they led big, but you gotta believe that Case Keenum's fighting for a job here. Their running backs did nothing. Darius Geis had 18 yards. Chris Thompson had 10 yards. Chris Thompson had a big game on the receiving front. Vernon Davis played well. A guy named Terry McLaurin. A lot of your teams, you're seeing that people are like really relying on younger guys, newer, lesser known guys. So that's cool to see. Carson Wentz had an amazing showing too. 28 for 39, 313 yards and 3 touchdowns. Alshon Jeffrey had a rushing touchdown. Darren Sproles kind of led them in rushing yards, but Miles Sanders had the most carries. Deshaun Jackson had 2 touchdowns. Alshon Jeffrey had a touchdown. Zach Ertz didn't have that good of a game. 5 receptions, 54 yards, but honestly, you can't get that mad. They had such an all-around attack. So that's just no reason for him to be mad about that. And then the final 1 o'clock game was the Rams Panthers. This came down to just whose defense would stop who first. Because these guys, like, I'm looking at it, the first quarter, not a single point was scored. Second quarter, a total of 26. Third quarter, 20. Fourth quarter, 21 combined. So these guys, after the first quarter, they stepped up their offenses. The Panthers really had a fight, really had a major fight back, but it was a little too late. But I'll start on the Rams side for this one. Jared Goff didn't have that good of a game, and I've been saying he's not that good of a quarterback. He's overrated, so, like, keep an eye out for that. Jared Goff, 23 for 39, 186 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So that sounds a lot like Ryan Fitzpatrick's stats, where I said in a winning effort. But this is the Rams. They have elite weapons. You should have seen him throw for about 200 to 300 yards when you have guys with lesser teams doing that. He has Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks, Tyler Higbee. He even has Todd Gurley, who's a very good receiving back. He should have had a better game. Speaking of Todd Gurley, 14 carries for 97 yards, not great on his standards, but it's a pretty good game for any running back. The Malcolm Brown, another running back, had 11 carries, 53 yards, and 2 touchdowns, so that's big for them. Cam Newton, on the other hand, really had a bad game. 25 for 38, 239 yards, and a pick. Not a single touchdown. He had -2 rushing yards. The only reason they were in this game is because Christian McCaffrey had 19 carries, 128 yards, and 2 touchdowns. They had to, like, rely so much on Christian McCaffrey, and then their kicker. Like, you have to wonder when it's time to, like, think maybe Cam's got to go. And I've been a big fan of Cam. I've been defending him. I think he's a really good quarterback. He just doesn't know how to get it done sometimes. Also, they relied on their fullback to get a rushing touchdown. So 3 rushing touchdowns, and not a single one from Cam. That's a sad showing. So now it's I'm going to talk about I think it was 4 o'clock games. Or 5. Oh, there were 5. I'm sorry. There were 5 4 o'clock games. I didn't get to watch a lot of them, so I'm still, like, trying to keep up with it. But the Colts Chargers, 30-24 Chargers. Now, this is an amazing showing for the Colts, seeing that they lost Andrew Luck 3 weeks ago, I believe it was, maybe even 2 weeks ago. So the fact that they lost Andrew Luck and still held their own against an elite team like the Chargers is impressive. Colts fans, you should be excited for your future because you got some good players. You got Jacoby Brissett, who had 21 for 27, 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. Marlon Mack, 25 rushes for 170 yards and a touchdown. T.Y. Hilton had the 2 receiving touchdowns, but, like, a really good game. And then there was Phillip Rivers, who had 333 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Austin Eckler had a really good game. He had 12 carries for 58 yards. Justin Jackson had 6 carries for 57 yards. Austin Eckler had 2 receiving touchdowns, and Keenan Allen had a touchdown. So just an all-around really, really good offensive game. Then we had, I'm going to try to speed through this as I realize this video is getting longer. Seahawks beat the Bengals 21-20. Andy Dalton played well, so did Russell Wilson, but Chris Carson ended up being the real factor on this game. I'm really trying to speed this up because, like, this is almost a 10-minute video. Actually, I think it's over 10 minutes. Cardinals-Lions, the first tie of the season. Kyler Murray started off terrible, ended up bringing them back, bringing an amazing game. 308 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Matt Stafford played well. Let me see. Sorry, I just talked about that. The Giants-Cowboys. Cowboys obliterated the Giants. Dak played amazing. Niners-Buccaneers. Jameis was terrible. Garoppolo was pretty good. There was nothing major. George Kittle did all right for him. And then now on to the evening games. The Steelers-Patriots, just the biggest blowout of the season, I think. 33-30. Ben was awful. Brady was amazing. Even Edelman had a pass. Even Edelman completed a 32-yard pass. Phillip Brissett was great. Josh Gordon was great. And they're still going to get Antonio Brown. Now on to the Monday night games. The Texans-Saints. Probably one of the best games of the week, in my opinion. Deshaun Watson had an outstanding game. 3 touchdowns, 268 yards and a pick. Drew Brees had a really good game. 370 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Came down to Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas getting it done when they needed it. And a nice rush and nice 43 yards and a touchdown from Latavius Murray. And then the final game of the week was the Raiders-Broncos, who no one expected the Raiders to come out firing like this, who played amazing. The Broncos couldn't get anything done. Joe Flacco had a passing touchdown, and Phillip Lindsay had 43 yards. Emmanuel Sanders the only one with a touchdown. Derek Carr had 259 yards and a passing touchdown. Joshua Jacobs, the rookie out of Why can't I find that out? All right, it doesn't matter. But the rookie had 2 rushing touchdowns, so he had an amazing game and put them over. Tyrell Williams had 105 yards. That is all the games for Week 1. If I had to pick a super person to put as my Week 1 MVP, I think it's obviously Lamar Jackson. Had 5 touchdowns. My Week 1 sleeper, I think it's Jacoby Brissett. Dude had an amazing game. Almost led them over the outstanding team of the Chargers. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you already subscribed, be sure to share this to your friends so they can subscribe too. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.